Welcome back to All This Math. This is Professor Parker, and today we are talking about how we are surrounded by math. We're talking about this famous viral TikTok reel, audio. Nothing beats a Jet 2 holiday, and I'm going to show you how there's math in that. So every time you hear that, we can do some math. All right, so you know how the lady be like, that's 50 pounds off, per person, right? So that's 200 pounds for a family of four, right? Now, how do we know that that's correct? Because if it's 50 pounds off, now, first off, what's a pound? Pound is the unit of currency for Great Britain, right? For Great Britain, England, all that, okay, over in Western Europe, right? So 50 Great British, Great British pounds, right? Or a pound, right? So 50 pounds off per person, all right? So she says a family of four, that's 200 pounds. Now, that's important because when we become fluent at mathematics, then we develop like what's called like a filter, right? We know if the math is correct. Whenever somebody says something mathematical, we know if it's correct or if it's incorrect. Because what if she was like, that's 100 pounds off for a family of four? Then that's when your, spidey senses are supposed to go off and be like, wait, hold up. How is 50 times four equal to 100? That's incorrect math. But as a consumer, we need to be aware of these types of things. We need to know how to protect ourselves from being taken advantage of. And if you don't know how to do multiplication, that will happen to you. It's only a matter of time, right? If it hasn't happened already. So now, but this is a question for parents. Whenever you hear this, whenever your children hear this, you can ask them some questions. Be like, well, if it's 200 pounds off for a family of four, how many pounds off would it be for a family of six? Right? And what's that? That's just 50 times 6. And what's 50 times 6? Now, it's important to know your multiplication facts because we can actually pretend that that zero is not there, right? Because 50 is really the same thing as 5 times 10. 50 can be represented as 5 times 10. And then we can use commutative property, move the numbers around. We could do 5 times 6, which is 30, and then do 30 times the 10, that's part of 50, and get 300, right? 30 times 10 is 300. Or we can just attach the 0 to 30 and make that 300. So for a family of six, it would be 300 pounds, right? What if it was a family of just three people? That's 50 times 3. 50 times 3 is 150, right? Now, that's just one thing you could do. Switch up the number of people in the family and just practice math that way, right? Because it's important to practice math so that you can become fluent in math, right? You want your children to become fluent in math. And we're surrounded by math problems. We just don't even recognize it a lot of the times. We don't need to wait for the schools to teach our children math. We don't need to wait for the schools to give our children opportunities to practice math. They can do it with us. They can do it right in the house. They can do it right in the community. These are just some examples of things we could do. Here's another thing. I live in the United States. We don't use British pounds as our currency. We use the US dollar, right? US dollar with the slaveholder George Washington's face on it, right? So we have what's called a conversion rate. So what if I want to know, well, damn, you know what? If 50 British pounds, right, represents the discount, how much would that discount be in US dollars? Now, I looked this up, and at the time of me recording this video, 1 British pound is equal to $1, it's this dollar symbol, and 35 cents. So 1 British pound is equal to $1.35. So with that information, I can do a unit conversion. And this is also something I talk about in my book, How to Use All This Math Volume 1, that you should grab off Amazon, right? I talk about how to do unit conversions, right? In everyday life situations. We can convert 50 British pounds to dollars using this information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a proportion. Use a different color too. So if 50 British pounds, well, first off, if 1 British pound is equal to $1.35, I set it up like that because this 1 and this $1.35 are the same value. They're the same value because they're equal to each other, right? Even though they're different numbers, they're the same value. Different numbers, 1.35 and 1, but the same value because they're equal to each other. All right. So that's equal to another fraction that needs to be equal to each other. Now I want to know how many dollars represent 50 British pounds. So I go over here, I do another fraction where pounds is on top, dollars on the bottom. Pounds on top, dollars on the bottom. So I do 50 up top, and then I do X on the bottom. Why X? Because that's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't know what that is yet. All right, I don't know what this is yet. I'm gonna figure it out. And I use something called that I call the Malcolm X method because I go into X formation when I do the calculation. Right? I'm gonna cross multiply in both directions to eliminate the fractions. Right? I'm trying to eliminate the fractions. So 1 times X, and I don't need to worry about these units really, but 1 times X is the same thing as X. Make sure you understand it. 1 times X means I have 1X. If I have 1X, I don't need to write the coefficient. I don't need to write that. And then 1.35 times 50. So 1.35 times 50, I don't have my calculator, right? But one thing I could do is I can multiply this by, I can multiply 1.35. This is a little math trick. Check this out. If I have to ever multiply something by 50, it's easy to multiply something by 100. And 100 is double of 50. So you can always just multiply the number by 100 and then take half of that number, since 50 is half of 100. All right. So again, I'm going to do $1.35 times 100. In order to do that, I just slide the decimal point 2 spaces over. So that's really the same thing as saying 135, but then I got to divide by 2. Why am I dividing by 2? Because I was only supposed to multiply by 50. I wasn't supposed to multiply by 100. I'm only multiplying by 100 as a strategy or a tactic. It's like a math trick, right? That works every time. I'm only doing that because the math is easier and I don't have my calculator with me. So now if I want to do 135 divided by 2, what I would do is break this down. First, I'm going to break it down into 130 and 5. I'm going to break 130 in half. What's 130 in half? 130 divided by 2 is 65, right? That's 65. And then $5 divided by 2 is $2.50. So, and that's what I did just right there. That's what some people call the new math. That's partial quotients method. I took this dividend and I broke it up into 2 parts, 130 and a 5. I divided the 130 by 2. I got 65, right? Then I divide the 5 by 2, just like if I got to split $5 with somebody, we each are getting $2.50. So 65 plus 250. Then I add the 2 quotients together, put them back together, and I get $67.50. So that's how we convert. So that means that when you hear the lady in the little jingle or whatever, right? Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday, 50 pounds off per person. That's the same thing as $67.50 off per person, just to give you an idea. And like what I'm saying is, this is just a way to practice math, and that's what we need to do. You get good at math by practicing math and actually doing math. And again, you don't gotta wait for parents. You don't gotta wait for your children to go to school to learn math. You don't gotta wait for your children to go to school to get practice at doing math. You don't gotta wait for that. All right, we can do it with them, right? As long as we know how to do these things. So make sure you know how to do this, right? We can ask the question about what if it was a different size family, number one, right? What if it was 6 people in the family? What if it was 3 people in the family instead of a family of 4, like the lady say on the little commercial John, right? But also, that's British pounds. What if we convert it to US dollars? This is how you do it. This is algebra right here. This is algebra 1. So if you got a child in 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, they should know how to do this. All right. And you should know how to do this so that you can show them how to do it. All right. All we did, we set up their proportion. That's what this is called, a proportion, when you got 2 fractions equal to each other. Right. If we know 1 pound is equal to $1.35. How do I know that? Because you Google it. You go online, look that up. Right. And it fluctuates. It changes. Right. Like I said, right before I recorded this video, this 1 pound was equal to $1.35. So you set up the fraction with the numerator equal to the denominator. Now I understand the numbers are different. Yes. But even though the numbers are different, the value is the same because this has the same buying power as this. Right? You can buy just as much with $1.35 as you can with 1 British pound because the pound is stronger. And that's a whole nother conversation about stronger and weaker currencies. That's, you know what I'm saying? That's a whole other video, right? For another time. But for now, just know that these values are equal to each other. And then if I want to know, well, how many dollars is equivalent to 50 British pounds, then I set up another fraction, 50 over X. And then I go evoke the ancestor, Malcolm X, invoke his name, and I cross multiply. I go into X formation, right? To clear out the fractions. $1.35 times 50, which is this right here. 1 times X, which is this right here. And then I just simplify 135 divided by 2. And we talked about how I got that. I use partial quotients. All right. The new math. Don't be scared of the new math. It's helpful, right? You're not always going to have a calculator, and you don't always need a calculator, right? Our brain is the first calculator. All right. So dig that. All right. So until the next video, see y'all later. Peace.